I'm a pretty laid back guy, but there are a number of things that can still annoy me. At the top of my head is seeing lack of African languages on popular online sites when I'm trying to get something translated in one of the many languages I'm interested in. Or having a way to get information in my preferred African language because of lack of available apps that can understand and provide me with that information. So you can imagine how giddy I got when platforms like Google Translate announced earlier this year that they're adding at least 10 more African languages, including languages like Lingala, spoken across Central Africa, and Oromo, spoken predominantly in Ethiopia. And when Meta, the company that owns Facebook, said it's working on improving translation services for 55 African languages, like Igbo, spoken across West Africa. Even with all this, there's still work to be done, and some of this space could use African developers to give us things like this.
Abena
Ekuya.
me pese me send sika
Sika na opese wo transfer.
101 Ghana cedis.
Yo, whether na opese me transfer sika command.
That's the sound of a voice assistance app called Abena. You probably noticed Abena is not speaking English, she's speaking Twi, one of Ghana's most spoken languages. Pretty cool, right? So how can we make sure that Africa's 2,000 plus languages are included in the online revolution? I'm Alan Kasujja, and this is Africa Daily. Now, there's a lot of difficult terms and words when it comes to this artificial intelligence technology. So I wanted to first break them down to understand better how exactly machines learn languages. I spoke to Dr Ignatius Ezeani, a Nigerian professor based in the UK who specializes in natural language processing.
Artificial intelligence aims at building machines that are artificially intelligent, as the name suggests. And in this case, it might be physical machines, it might be software machines. You expect them to perform tasks that will require human intelligence to be done. And machine learning is the process we go through building algorithms to train these machines to learn to perform these tasks intelligently.
So machine learning sounds like an ongoing process that can never stop because artificial intelligence has to keep improving. And depending on the quality of the machine learning, the artificial intelligence gets better. Is that right?
Perfect. That's perfect. The core components of machine learning will be giving experience to the machine, which in this case will be data in most cases, and then evaluating their performance on the expected results in the tasks that they're doing. Like you said, it needs to be continuously improved.
It also includes languages. I know that natural language processing is used to teach and help computers to understand human languages. I've always wondered how that works. How are companies like Google or Amazon able to create translation tools or even voice assistants?
The way they do that is to basically create data sets, we call them, containing the languages that they want to build translation tools on, and then use that to train and evaluate the performance of that. So they give these tools examples of language A and its translation in language B, and then find out later if they give them examples that they haven't seen before, whether they should be able to produce the expected translation.
Your work is around the adaptation of existing language models for what is called low-resource languages. What are those low-resource languages?
If you use any of these tools, you'll notice that definitely English will be the dominant language. Then you see a lot of European languages from Spanish to French and all that. But there are so many other languages, especially language from Africa or Asia or even parts of Europe that are not properly integrated in these tools. And we consider these languages low resource, not because they don't have enough speakers that speak them, but because they don't generate as much content on the internet like you do with English and Spanish and all the other ones. The speakers of these languages tend to be marginalized, more or less. I mean, it's inadvertent, but it's happening. That if you pick a device and you want to use the facilities on that device, you have to learn another language other than the one you originally speak.
African languages, how are they coping? Which ones are doing well as far as artificial intelligence is concerned?
In the past, will I say 5 years or so, a lot of African languages were actually struggling. But for quite some time now, there's been dedicated effort towards building resources and support for these languages. Languages like Swahili, for instance, a lot of Nigerian languages, because Africa has about 2,000 languages, and that accounts for approximately 30% of all the world languages, more or less. So some of those major languages in Africa are now beginning to come up. We are beginning to have people who are willing to work, because the challenge initially isn't just that we don't have the data set or data to work on these languages. The challenge was also that we don't have speakers of these languages who are enabled enough to get into helping to develop this, because we really need to evaluate the output from these tools we are building. As I'm talking to you now, languages like Igbo, my language, Hausa, Yoruba, Bambara, Swahili, and so on, they are all getting on board.
And I wonder if there'll be a time when Alexa and Siri will speak African languages. Do you think that's something that we should look forward to? And is there even an appetite for it?
There is an appetite for that. And I think that will actually move faster than processing text. Processing speech will move faster, because most of these languages, they're more spoken than written. And if we can nest the audio from the radio stations, from the TV stations, from the churches, from different places that people actually interact in their local language, then we have enough data sets to build speech technologies. So Siri and Alexa would definitely speak African languages sooner.
It's also very important that African countries are not left behind. We were not part of the first industrial revolution, the second one, or even much of the third. But now is a good time for us to make sure that we keep up with the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, that's perfectly what we're championing. I have always argued that with these devices speaking all the Western languages, for each device, you have another speaker of another Western language. And then you are increasing the number of speakers of this. So you're inadvertently, again, marginalizing a section of the world. I do believe that we should do everything possible at this stage to make sure that we get African languages on board.
I agree with Dr. Ezeani. It would be great to see more African languages join the artificial intelligence revolution. And many African entrepreneurs are starting to catch up on this and doing their bit. Nana Ghartey is a software developer from Ghana. He created the voice assistant called Abena that we had from earlier. The app, just on Android phones for now, speaks 2 dialects of Twi, one of Ghana's most spoken languages. And as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. Nana developed Abena from a simple interaction with his grandmother.
My granny really inspired me to start work on Abena. So growing up with her, I realized that she really struggled to use her mobile phone. Anytime my grandmom had to make a phone call, she would ask for my help. As soon as she was done with a call, she would ask me to check her call credit balance for her. I remember there was this one time that I overheard her arguing. I quickly rushed to find out what was going on. It turned out that she was arguing with the automated customer care voice response. I asked her why. She said, it was because the voice response service was telling her she had run out of credits. So when that happened, I just felt that, something has to be done about this, because obviously, because she couldn't check her call credit on her own, she never knew if she had enough credits to stay on a call for long. She simply couldn't use digital services. Most of these digital services that we are able to use, we take for granted. She also had knee problems. She had acute arthritis and she couldn't walk properly. Getting up was a very difficult task for her. So she couldn't get up. She couldn't walk to, say, turn the lights. So she had to call me once again for my help. So I had to stop whatever I was doing, go to her, and then turn the lights on and off for her. I realized technology could solve most of these challenges she faced. That was the main motivation behind building a voice assistant that supports our Ghanaian languages.
But like we heard from Dr. Ezeani, some of Africa's languages are under-resourced. So how did Nana go about getting the language data for Abena?
I realized we had to kind of build from scratch. we had to collect the data from scratch. So we used a couple of techniques. The first method we used was crowdsourcing. The advantage or the good thing was that we already had existing apps. We kind of leveraged the traction we had. So assuming you were one of our users in our apps, occasionally we will present a form saying, hey, we are building a voice AI for your language, and we would be grateful if you translated and recorded these short phrases for us. We introduced sort of incentives. We paid each user, any user who helped with the translation, they had to get something in return. The final strategy was actually getting freelancers to work with us. I believe that really worked since they were employed full-time and they were expert translators. It really helped in gathering the data we needed.
I was curious. Nana started this whole thing because of his grandmother. How is she finding it? Does she enjoy using it?
The app has kind of broken barriers she used to face when accessing digital services. Initially, her response was, she had to go through a bit of education to understand what was really going on. She assumed she could ask the AI any question at all. I had to let her know that, this is not a human being you are talking to. So far, so she still uses it, and it has really helped her a lot. She doesn't need to wince in pain getting up from the chair all the time to turn on light in her rooms and so on. Because now when she needs to turn the light on, all she needs to do is just say Abena Sokania no mame, which translates to turn on the light for me. And when it comes to things like phone calls, weather, Momo transactions, she's able to do all that on her own. So now she's able to use her mobile phone without stress.
It's so heartwarming to hear about Nana's grandmother and how she got to grips with technology. Hopefully we'll see more of these apps in the future, especially ones that speak some of those languages I learned growing up, like Luo, Luya, Kikuyu. Thanks to my guests today, Dr. Ignatius Ezeani and Nana Ghartey. Africa Daily is a BBC World Service production, and my producers today were Priya Sipi, Victoria Wahunda, Richard Moran, and Janet Ball. Our editors are Toyosi Ogunshe and Simon Peaks. Drop me a line in whatever language you fancy. Hopefully, I'll find a way of translating it if I don't understand it. I'm on Twitter. My handle is @Kasujja. That's with 2 J's.